My dear professional colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, when Dr. Shadrich of the NGO, he contacted me, I felt happy again that a conference is going to be held on public library systems with particular reference to India. When I started recalling, I must have attended almost 50 conferences by now on public libraries. As president of the Indian Library Association, as vice president of IPLC, and in many other capacities, I always felt that public library is one field which needs to be given prominence. I don't have to go into details what is a public library. You have been hearing about it since morning. I don't have to say what is the role of a public library. Actually, as a Tagore National Fellow, I submitted a 2-volume report, and that is for public library service in Delhi, the present situation and the future for the next 25 years. I again feel very strongly that a public library movement, and this is one of our recommendations in the National Knowledge Commission, that a public library should be financed by the government, but at the same time, there should be a contribution, a support. It should be a mutual support between private and public sector. Public sector has a lot of interest, and I find the NGOs being represented here. They have shown a great interest in organizing the conference. I admire it. I'll just mention, as I define a public library of the people, for the people, and by the people. When we look at one of the most important definitions of a public library was given by a great author, Elvin Johnson, when he called a public library a people university. And it is a people's university which has connotation. It is meant for all. It is directed towards education. It is directed towards learning. And in that context, I don't think there is any difference of opinion. And it is something which is an essential component of a democratic system. I will just like to mention that being a student of Ranganathan myself, and some of you must have heard his name already, particularly in the field of library science, everyone knows about him. It is he who for the first time got a public library law enacted in this country, and that was in 1948. It is he again who, in collaboration with UNESCO, convinced them the public library is not meant only for uneducated people, but also a society which is semi-literate or emerging towards to be literate. And as a result, when UNESCO decided to organize and start certain public libraries in different parts of the world, one of them was started in Delhi, which is called Delhi Public Library. That was sometime in 1950. My dear friends, I find the topic of this discussion is public library for all. It is meant for all. Should be financed by public through a public library law and through other various means which can be thought about. So in that case, I will like to reiterate that it is something to be admired that we are talking about certain issues which are relevant, which are important, and my only submission to the organizers and to the people in my profession is that passing resolution will not do. If I look into the resolutions which we have passed in the last 50 years of my stay in this profession, I think I can compile a 12-volume set. My dear friends, the need today is to take decision how to implement what we want. Passing a public library law is becoming a formality. 19 states have public library law, and I think not more than 5 or 6 have actually implemented it. Others are only keeping on the paper. I still remember one of the chief ministers, I happened to meet him, and he happened to be a student in Delhi University in those days, and he was a resident of the hostel where I was the provost. And I happened to meet him in one of the seminars which he had organized. He was the chief guest there. And I said, Mr. Chief Minister, you have a public library law, why not implement it? He said, Professor, do we have a public library law? And that law was passed as early as 1989. My dear friends, I'll not like to go into details of this matter because we have 3 honored speakers. My only submission will be that do pass recommendations, but also create a proactive group to implement it. And implement it not just in the form of a public library law, do pass a public library law. It is the mechanism which gives us the basis to support, but also see that in what best possible manner we can implement it. And before I request my speakers, I want to add one thing. Ranganathan got the public library enacted because he was committed for it. I don't go into detail, but when he had taken a decision to implement, to get the law passed, he found that one of his students was the education minister in Tamil Nadu, at that time Madras. He went to him, and the minister showed all respect to him, and he said, I have come here for Guru Dakshina. And that Guru Dakshina is that you please pass the public library law for Madras state. And that is how the public library law was passed. My dear friends, my suggestion to all my colleagues in the profession is that after passing the resolutions here, please take a proactive role and see that in what best possible manner we can create a network of public libraries in a country which is democratic, where people want library service, and in what way we can spread the message of education and learning in the society.